down and check the battery of the camera, and it appears I have enough juice left to read another email. So I'm going to not do any babbling like I normally do, and I'm going to read this one, and then I'm going to head her home. And maybe I'll throw the drone up and show you exactly where I am today. I have a couple of counters for you. I just thought that maybe they would be interesting to share. I'm curious to what you or other people might think. I just saw one of your videos, so now I'm motivated to let other people hear my story. Thank you for that. We appreciate that. My first encounter was a handful of years back. I'm only 16 now, so I was about 12 then. It was the opening weekend of Wisconsin's 9-day deer hunt. I was in Cumberland, Wisconsin, near the County Highway H, in a little camper parked on public land. I was with my grandfather. We had just gotten back down from town after getting a bite to eat. We were settling down for bed as we had to get up around 3:30 the next morning, and it was very cold that night. I think I remember looking at the thermometer at -8°F, which is pretty chilly in a little camper. My grandfather's a big snorer, so I couldn't sleep because of his noise. I was laying there in my bunk when I heard this loud thump grunt that kind of came at the same time, like someone was carrying something heavy and dropped it. I really didn't think anything of it, honestly, just the thought it was a bear. But until I could start hearing footsteps in the crunchy snow outside, it sounded like a two-footed being making some loud noise. I could tell they were getting closer to the camper. My grandfather then woke up from the commotion and asked, "What was that?" And the thing outside must have heard him talking. I could hear it running away lightning fast through the woods, making all kinds of noise, and at the time, I never really heard of a Bigfoot or whatever. My grandfather said, "Damn, someone just trying to break in." And I guess that was a good answer to what I thought I heard, and I was able to go back to sleep after shaking from the terror. Fast forward to the morning, we started to get up, and we were trying to be as quiet as we were, only hunting a few hundred yards from the camper in a few short hours. So after we were done getting dressed, I went to open the door, which makes a loud screeching sound. And right as I opened the door, I heard this loud, blood-curdling scream. It couldn't have been 30 yards from the camper. I jumped back inside quickly and locked the door, and my grandfather and I sat in the camper until daylight before we looked outside, and then we packed up and drove off without being able to hunt in the woods that day. I was still curious on what we heard and dealt with that night until it happened just last fall. Last fall I was squirrel hunting with my grandfather. Funny how he's always around when stuff happens. We were hunting in Fort McCoy, near Sparta, Wisconsin, about a mile from where my grandfather grew up, so he knew the area damn well, and he always had his spots that we would go to. There's a small creek that runs through called La Crosse River, and for whatever reason the water is really low, so we were able to walk on the banks where the water would be, but there was still some water trickling in the middle with big rocks and boulders. Downriver was a small waterfall. The acorns are falling on the banks, so the squirrels are all over those, so we show quite a few. The acorns are falling on the banks, so the squirrels were all over those. So we show quite a few, so we were making a lot of noise with the 22 rifles. Oh, sorry, there's spelling mistakes for you guys. I haven't pre-read anything, I don't have time. The acorns are falling on the banks, so the squirrels were all over those, so we shot a few. So we were making a lot of noise with our 22 rifles. I would always walk behind my grandfather when we would hunt. We came around a bend in the creek, and I was looking down in some deer tracks when I suddenly walked into the back of my grandfather, who was looking straight ahead, and I couldn't see what he was looking at, which I assumed was a squirrel. So I peeked around him, and about 50 yards downstream was a large, black, furry creature squatted down on a rock with his hands in the water. He was near the small waterfall, which was making noise, which is why I thought he couldn't hear us. We stood there in the wide open looking at her for about 10 seconds, and I couldn't make out two large brown feet that were hairless on the bottom and ears on her head, along with a nose protruding from its face. Suddenly must have saw us in its peripherals, and she stood up with a "what the fuck" look on her face. It stood about 8 feet tall, and her legs were just like stumps. You might wonder why I'm calling her she, and that's because she had typical Daniel's figures that a human would have. And she looked really tended up, and she then took 2 huge running steps across the river and booked up the bank, and as she ran through the woods making all sorts of racket. My grandfather stood there speechless, and for a while we then decided we could go look, at the spot and the tracks in the mud, as we knew it was long gone because we could hear it running for 20 seconds. We walked up to the spot, and on the rock were shells of dead crayfish. That thing was picking out crayfish from the water and eating them. Crazy intelligence. The tracks had been damn near 2 feet long and 6 to 8 inches wide. We noticed that she only had 4 toes on her right foot and 5 on her left. I really wish I had my phone so I could have taken a picture to show how big them footprints were. I realized that it would take 10 to 12 regular steps to make up the space that she covers in 2. After looking at it for a while, we booked it out of there pretty fast to the truck. I've not talked to my grandfather about that moment since it happened. We never felt threatened, but we were sure scared shitless. Thanks for reading this, and it'd be nice if you did not mention my name. Have a good one. Well, that's pretty crazy encounter, man. It's definitely something to behold with your eyeballs if you didn't previously know about them, right? And it's funny with and on the name mentioning thing, and for all of you, if you don't want your name mentioned, just don't put it in the story and don't put it in the email, all right? Because some of these emails are really, really long, and apparently I read somebody's name in their email after they asked me not to. And if, obviously as I get caught up reading the story, I read it, haven't pre-read it for you guys, and I spits out. I think I did it once, and I apologize to the person I possibly did that to. So again, if you guys send me your experience, you don't want your name known, just don't tell me your name. Don't write it in there, all right? But again, thank you very much for sending us and sharing that experience with us. And I'd like to add to that, the creek thing. That's how my grandfather came face to face with one of these things. Same thing. He slid on his ass down the bank to a creek in mid-July, broad daylight, and this thing was squatting down over the water. I think he said 15 to 20 yards away from him. And since then, I've taken note that so many people have walked right up on these things, these people, these beings, in the timber, in the forest, along creek beds and river beds. That's a very, very common one. Coincidentally, that's also how I have walked up on some of my more nastier grizzly bear encounters. The closest ones have always been beside rushing water because they just can't hear you coming. But what I'm curious about is what it is about a river, the sound, the layout of the land. Is it because they're below the height of land? I don't know the structure, which inhibits the sixth sense of these beings, these people, to not sense is coming up on them when they're squatting over water focused. That's a curious point to me of which factor is it? Is because it can't, I'm sure it's not the sound. It can't be the sound of the creek. But something's going on there. There's something going on there. That's their Achilles heel. That's a weakness they have, is creeks and running water and being squatting down and focusing on the water. And so many people have walked up on these beings doing that. It's overwhelming. There's a lot. But anyway, there you go. There's another one. Now I got to get my butt out of here and carry on. But keep on emailing me those encounters if you think it's going to help you or help other people. All right? Be safe out there.